This video is going to be for you, that person who has been judged and condemned by another, that you weren't good enough, decent enough, Christian enough, good enough for another person, that you are so beneath them that they wouldn't associate with you. I've never found someone who has had a bad relationship with God and it not stem from a Christian hurting them. And unfortunately, God sometimes gets blamed for another Christian's bad behavior and treatment. It's not fair because it's not God's fault. People have free will. So, because that was just a story of my life, I decided to put together verses. I put together a blog, and I'm creating this into a video. And this will be created to a podcast. I went ahead and put together the Bible verses that these people stand behind to justify their treatment of another, preferably a fellow Christian. This is what helps them sleep at night for the decisions that they decide to make. And this topic needs to be done. It needs to be said, because when people ignore something that is done to them, how many times someone has said, just, don't rehash it. It's bad for you to just rehash it. Quit thinking about it. Quit talking about it. Let it go. Let it slide. Or, don't comment. Just ignore them. If you acknowledge their hate, it's just giving them the fuel they want. No, that actually creates that behavior and makes it expand further, because you don't call it out, because you don't highlight what they're doing wrong, because you ignore it. It gets worse, as we have seen in society. So I never let someone comment and say something that is clearly inappropriate or clearly a dick thing to say, and they're trying to be a jerk. I don't let them get away with that, because that will let them think that they can continue to treat that to other people. And maybe they'll treat it to someone who really has dealing with depression, that doesn't have enough mental strength to handle that kind of hate, that kind of bullying. Some people commit suicide because they just can't handle it. So it's important that those that can and have the ability to respond should always respond. Don't ever ignore the haters. Don't ever ignore those comments. Call them out when you see them. You do so much damage when you don't. You don't take the high road. You don't take, you don't ignore that. Michelle Obama's famous quote, take the high road. No. That's what got us to where we are today, because people thought by not stooping down to another person's level that they are impacting the world more. No, you're letting those people get away with it. Sometimes the only way for someone to understand what they're doing to another person is if that same thing is done to them. When you allow somebody to get comfortable in treating you a certain way, or making them think, because you don't correct them, that it's okay, you're teaching them how to treat you. They will continue to do that, and to others as well. You have to get down to their level like you would to a child. Teaching a child, you get down to their level. You work with them. You work with their way of communicating in order to impact a child and teach them. The same goes for these haters. The same goes for these losers. You get down at their level and you play their game, but you play it effectively by giving them a taste of their own medicine, and 99% of the time they can't handle it. They won't look at it. They won't see it. And sometimes you might feel like you're wasting your time, but you don't continue to do it. You do it as a response to what they have done to you, and you drop it. You make it clear what they've done. Maybe give them a taste of their own medicine, but call their crap out. And then you leave. And then you disassociate. Then you cut yourself off. But you have to at least have a response. Now, the people that don't want to be called out, they don't want to hear it, they'll avoid you. They'll avoid the conversation. They'll avoid interacting with you if they don't even want to be corrected or heard. They'll block. They'll delete their original comment. Whatever it is, the people that don't want to face it, they're pussies. Honestly, I have a few people in my life that I know that are complete pussies and hypocrites, right? They don't want to see their own sin, their own issues. They don't want to see the hypocrisy in their lives. They're happy to call out what they see in others. But if you try to call out what you see, you're negative. You're living in the past. You're bitter. You must be depressed. Man, you must not sleep good. How pathetic. They try to flip it like a narcissist would. My family is full of narcissistic people. And one thing I've learned in my older age is to not let them get away with it. I will call it out. I will need that kind of closure. And if you're not ready to stand there and be judged like you have spent years doing to me, then we don't associate. But I need to always say our piece. Always call out other people's shit. Be humble and acknowledge your own, yes. Which is the one thing I've always done with my family. I have been criticized, condemned, judged, mistreated so much, and I just took it. I bent over and took it for years. Took it from my ex. And then I found myself. I found my voice. I found my strength, and I realized that I allowed these people to do this because I never stood up to myself. I never stooped down to their level to show them how they literally, who they were, how they were coming across in their treatment of me. I regret not opening my mouth more. I really, truly do. So now I use my platform to have those moments where I explain these things. It's kind of therapeutic. Write blogs about it, podcast videos, because many other people need to know that. The world needs to know that you don't just ignore the haters. You make sure you call them out. Don't let them get away with anything. If you have not had closure, then you make sure you get that damn closure, or you disassociate. If they're not mature enough and humble enough and ready, they'll leave, they'll disappear, they'll block, whatever. At least you attempted to make sure you put them in their place. You at least have to try. That's for your own peace of mind. That's for your own growth. That's for your own self-respect. So, in this blog, I'll link it below, but I list the verses, mainly speaking to Christians, because it's amazing that the most judgmental, hypocritical people are quote-unquote Christians. And I explain to you why that is. I list all the verses because I grew up with these type of people. They're still this way, even though they think they've evolved. And this is what they justify. This is how they justify their treatment of others. And so I explain it. I'll link that down below, and I will do the rest in a podcast. So if you're watching this on video, I will link the podcast also in the notes below, because I think something like this, you really need to listen, and there's nothing I could visually say. It's mainly more impactful from the word standpoint, and for a written word standpoint, so my blog or my podcast. But if you're curious to know what those things are, click the links below, and it'll all make sense to you. Next time you see a Christian or a person who calls himself a Christian and fits this kind of character, you'll be able to know what to say. You'll understand it a little bit more. It'll make sense why there are Christians out there that feel like God supports a certain type of judgment, and they feel good about it. So I'll see you over there, or I'll see you in my next video.